Good morning, everybody, and welcome along to this Saturday show brought to you by Lime Energy, fresh thinking energy. Big thanks to Lime for sponsoring this show every weekend this year as we bring you a tactical breakdown of Rangers. And what a tactical breakdown!
You're too high energy for my mood.
I'm going into full presenter mode, Joshua, trying to bring everyone up this Saturday morning when I know that the mood is. Yes, lower than a caterpillar's belly at the minute. How are you, dare I ask?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Okay.
It's just, it's not great.
No, it's not.
It's not
No,
great.
it's not.
I'll leave it at
But
that.
the reason we are here, Joshua, is to try and answer some of these questions.
Yep.
Is to try and unpick why it is looking the way that it is. Because I think that the whole premise of this show, often when it's good, it's to try and give fans a little bit more.
When is it
insight.
good, Blair? When have we done good things on this show?
Let's not be entirely existential and miserable about it. It's to try and highlight what Rangers are doing and why they're doing it, and to give people a little more insight into what they're watching, hopefully. And when it's bad, like it is now, it's to try and again understand why things are happening that people can't understand, why they continue to happen, and why the mistakes keep getting made, and why the results continue to go in the pattern that they currently are, which is not good for Rangers. Of course, we are talking about the midweek game against Jagiellonia Białystok. Rangers drawing the game 1-1, the fourth competitive match for Derek McInnes, and the fourth game without a victory. It's a game which, of course, saw Rangers exit the Europa League, and tomorrow they have a mammoth League Cup tie against St Mirren. And I don't think that sentence has ever been constructed before, but it really is huge. Before we get into the minutiae of the tactics, Joshua, it's massive because Ibrox is going to be on tender hooks tomorrow, and I daren't even think about the reaction at full time if it doesn't go Rangers' way.
Yeah, me neither. It's kind of familiar soul-searching questions there's we could actually do a podcast for about 3-4 hours here. I think big picture.
We're not. Don't worry.
We don't have time. I think, which we'll get into a bit of today. I think big picture, you're looking at just the volume of signings since last summer, the pivots from managers to managers, and to break the cycle that Rangers have been in for a long, long time. There will need to be that short-term pain. But you need to make sure you're on the right path, and you need to have that short-term pain, or to get something going. You need to get results or performances early, and I feel like Rangers haven't had either so far. And we were speaking on last week's Saturday show, and Rangers hadn't 1 and 2, and you're kind of going, I think we titled the show what is going wrong, or what the Rangers need to do after no wins in 2. Now it's no wins in 4, Blair.
Yeah.
And the potential of the potential in no wins in 5, and Rangers should beat St Mirren at home, but I don't think you can predict anything confidently at the moment.
No.
So we're going to get into. There's obviously so much going on, and recruitment's almost a whole separate topic, which we'll revisit before or after the window's closed. But going to try and look a little bit today at why is there so many shapes, kind of the round pegs and square holes that Derek McInnes referenced in his press conference on Saturday. Why the Rangers look so open. Dan Neil called counter-attack goals their kryptonite. There's an element of chicken and egg to this conversation, because McInnes has kind of repeatedly made the point of, playing with fire was his comment before the game on Thursday. He's spoken a lot about needing more help, having not had a right winger going to Dundee United. And then he also said he didn't think Rangers were maybe not ready for the Champions League or Europa League. And for a club who was in the final 4 years ago,
for a quarter final 2 years ago,
who spent upwards of 60 million in the last 12 months, that's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy.
I wasn't a massive fan of that comment, I'll be honest. I don't.
You can't, on the basis of that performance, whoever's fault it is. I don't think Rangers are ready for the Euro.
No, you can't. But
purely
objectively,
should be, of course.
But you can't just say that and expect fans to swallow that, because to admit that is to admit that there is fundamentally something going wrong, because there is structurally, whatever it is, to say that you've been in a Europa League final and quarter-final in the past, 4 years, to then go, this team has had massive investment spent in it, and now it's not ready for that competition, is a damning indictment of what's gone wrong in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and it's obviously big. This is a difficult, Andrew Kavanagh speaking at the shareholder meeting on Monday, this Monday.
It feels like a long week, Josh. Feels like a long week, I'll tell you that.
It definitely does. That started. He was keen to point out and kind of reiterated about recruitment not being an individual's fault. Taking recruitment as an example, Blair, and Rangers have changed their structure since sacking Patrick Stewart and Kevin Thelwell. But while I think the club hierarchy are clearly keen to make this a collective, have collective ownership around this, it is someone's fault that the Rangers are in this position. So it's wider than Derek McInnes. Obviously, he's 4 games in. What manager, and he probably should have done better with those 4 games, right? But what manager is going to be near the finished product within 4 games? But what I would say is that this kind of soul searching, whose fault is it? The summer isn't a clean slate because you've got to get rid of players who've been here before, and it just feels so. It feels so familiar, that doesn't it? And you're right, from a club wide perspective, from those in the past to those now, to not be Europa League ready. Take away that comment, just from the performance and the squad. That is a huge issue.
Massive. So let's try and get into it. Let's try and find some answers for the viewers as to why this is going wrong. Because one of the key things that came out of the game on Thursday night was the changing of shape that we seen from the start of the game when Denny McInnes went with a 3-5-2. Rangers didn't have a left back by trade to play, so to circumvent that, he just didn't play one at all. He just played with 3 at the back, put 5 across midfield, and put 2 up front, and played Daisuke Yokota and Jedi Gisama as roaming wing backs. And by all accounts, in that first half, I personally thought that the wing backs were dangerous. It seemed to be where most of Rangers' creativity was coming from. Okay, behind Jedi Gisama was a problem area. I worried about that because it seemed to be that Conceição was, anytime he was getting in, he was exploiting a lot of space in behind Gisama, and you could see that Jagiellonian has seen that as an area where they could attack. But Rangers were offering something going forward. They did have some sort of creative element to it. You get to half time, Tello Asgard is removed for Ross McCrory. He goes back to his favoured 4-4-2, and Rangers lose all semblance of control in that game. And that has got to be a worrying sign.
Just a peek behind the curtains for viewers. Whenever we do these Saturday morning therapy sessions, Blair has a word with me in the office before, and he says, just stick to your notes so I can edit it. And you've jumped forward to point 3.
Yes. So, but okay, well,
so thanks for that.
Why do Rangers keep changing shape? Let's start off with that top line.
We'll get to that. Why do they keep changing shape? So I think today what we should speak about is what is McInnes trying to do? Because every manager, he didn't want to use the word philosophy, it's unveiling, but every manager has like a core idea, and things are based around that. And there's good associated with that, and there's bad associated with that. For me, an example of that is Cammy Devlin. As a midfielder, has the legs and the ability to cover ground that enables you to play with 2, cover big spaces, play with 2 strikers, play with 2 wingers. But the trade-off for that, the downside, is what we saw against Hibs, which we'll look at in a minute, which is a load of sideways passes and nowhere near enough progression from the base of midfield, which is Rangers' issue that I feel this has always spoken out for the last year. If you don't control the ball, if you're not a team that is kind of at your most comfortable in those games, you've got 65% of the ball, I just don't think you'll win the league. Why do Rangers keep changing shape? So McInnes doesn't play with a left back against Jagiellonian, much in the way he doesn't play with a right winger against Dundee United on the opening day of the season. Now, where do you have some sympathy with him? I think
because he doesn't have one.
Because he doesn't have one.
Yeah.
Right. So if he had a balanced squad, then would we have seen this number of changes of shape? He spoke yesterday in his Saturday press conference about. No, today's Saturday. We're recording before Saturday. In a press conference that will be out today. There we are.
Yes.
Gosh, that was confusing. About the kind of round pegs and square holes element. So I don't think he's been helped by that, but I still think he's made too many changes within that.
Mm-hmm.
So you've had 4 different kind of shapes. You had a lopsided 4-3-3 against Dundee United, and then a kind of the flip that against Jagiellonia. Then you had a back 3 in possession shape against Hibs with Dragicevic moving forward from right back.
Sort of inverted full-back idea.
Yeah. And then you had a back 3 shape kind of without that against Jagiellonia, which we'll look at.
A more traditional back 3, if you will.
Yeah, in a second. So I think you can criticise the squad building to not have certain players available. McInnes himself said Rangers have been playing with fire on that front.
Mm-hmm.
And you can say that still you're looking at that game tomorrow and how many players, aside from players who have to play, could you confidently predict the centre of midfield?
No.
For example, there's still been too many changes within that. So I think the squad's built in this kind of 4-4-2 structure. That's what the profiles have been recruited for. But he hasn't had the depth, so he's had to move a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think within that, there's been just way too many changes, and the kind of disjointed nature of the chances Rangers are conceding comes down to a bit of the man-to-man pressing, which we'll speak about, in my opinion. But I also think it's because those relationships, those kind of core tenets of a team that you're looking for, just haven't been there in the first 4 games of the season.
Mm-hmm. McInnes's footballing ideology, then, what we were promised from Derek McInnes: 2 strikers, attacking wingers, stability, but to move the ball quickly, to move the ball forward. This is kind of where Jim Gillespie's Jurgen Klopp quote came in. It's about his Derek McInnes is a sort of manager that leans into the fans, leans into the culture, leans into getting the ball quickly rather than forward quickly, rather than perhaps a more a Guardiola type who is into the sort of nitty gritty and wants everyone to be at a certain point on the park at any given time. I think McInnes is a bit more that he likes players to go and make a difference if they can do it, and if they can go and show a little bit of individualism, go and do it. The way that he's set up so far with these 2 strikers and trying to move the ball forward, it's not working in the same way that it did for him at Hearts. Is that simply down to personnel?
Well, I think you're right in that. If so last night, the first half was the first time you've seen 2 wingers play, really, because Curtis, he's a winger, but he can't go by a man down the line in the same way maybe Gassama can. And I think what you saw from that, while there was risks associated with it, which we'll touch on, that's how I think McInnes wants to get the ball forward, is either going direct and using a physical number 9, or playing wide, getting the balls to the wingers who can progress the ball individually. I think it relies on an individualism that he's not had so far. The big issue for me, which I'll come to touch upon, is the big spaces on and off the ball. And I think a lot of Rangers' issues can be summarised down to that, and the fact that they're playing with 2 strikers and they want to get a lot of crosses into the box, but getting the ball there, controlling the game, just hasn't happened for them so far. So everything's a trade-off. So that Cammy Devlin example, if we throw up his pass map against Hibs, he stayed on the pitch for the whole 90 minutes. And, as you can see from this pass network, I think when you're trying to break a team down, the ball just went sideways so much. Now, is that partly instructive because McInnes wants to build around the sides? Because, again, to get into the nitty-gritty of it, you're not seeing the team kind of compact at the base of the pitch and try and control and move slowly, as you maybe saw Russell Martin try to do last summer. He wants to get the ball forward. It's about man-for-man duels. It's about hitting the strikers early.
On this pass map, just Darcy, what we're looking at here, what do the red and yellow arrows represent for everyone who's looking at this pass map?
Yeah, so red's completed and yellow's... red's a successful pass, yellow an unsuccessful pass.
Okay, yeah. Very ironic that all of the unsuccessful passes are going forward.
Yeah, and for me, I think Devlin is exceptional at that, winning the ball back really quickly, but as we said, a lot of people have said over summer, I don't think Rangers' issue has been biting midfield. Rangers' issue has been controlling midfield and a team that is orientated towards that. I even felt that for Tello Asgard in the first half of Thursday's game. Was he good? No. But how does he get on the ball? Because he's having to make a lot of these channel runs. For me, again, that's chicken and egg. So Derek McInnes is speaking about Tello Asgard not being in the game. But is that the fault of the system, or is that the fault of the individual? To break it down further, I think if you look at Danny Rule's football, so Danny Rule had his team, and how does the on-ball impact the off-ball? He had his 4 attackers really narrow in part because he wanted to press compactly, and his team were quite compact and they protected the centre of the pitch. Whereas Derek McInnes, with his man-for-man preference, wants to have these big open spaces, which I think relies on winning these individual battles to such a degree. You also saw Rule use a lot more kind of rotations with midfielders dropping back into the spots of fullbacks at points. McInnes doesn't want as much of that because he wants more structure on the ball and off the ball for these man-to-man duels. So again, what you do on the ball impacts what you do off the ball.
Would it be a fair assessment then, listening to that Derek McInnes is putting more responsibility on each individual?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah. So if we look, for example, at this example of the Jesus Imaz chance where he hits a post. Now, some suggestion this might have been offside. It was very close, and it wasn't an outlier, and that Rangers conceded dangerous chances in that first half. So what's happened here? We've taken the. I'm going to put my glasses on so I can actually see this. We've taken this as the moves progressed, but Rangers are pressing man for man, and I think it kind of reminds me of this setup of, you know, when Clement couldn't beat Celtic and then he changed. So what he was, and Celtic's rotations, it had like Tom Lawrence on Cal McGregor. Celtic would just do a little pass where they bounced it into one of the number 8s back to the number 6.
Yeah.
And it was too easy to manipulate. It's kind of like almost man marking at corners for me, where there's a time and a place to do it, but it can be quite easy to manipulate if you're doing it all the time. And I think if we're talking about big spaces, one of the issues Rangers have had is they're not getting enough rest on the ball because they're having to play forward quite directly and it's all very wide and open. They're not getting a rest and kind of sitting back and sitting in their shape and then pressing at the right moments, which is what you see. You saw Clement eventually move to. So you've got hybrid or man for man. Hybrids kind of, you stick in your zone and you jump out at certain moments. Whereas Rangers have largely been going man for man at all times, which is why you see Dan Neil get pulled back into the back 3 on Thursday night. And I just think that leaves you so vulnerable to one error opening up your team. So Jagiellonier here progressed the ball forward. And Nico Raskin and Tello Asgard are both kind of in between their men. Sorry, Ryan Nadiri and Tello Asgard. Nico Raskin has been pressing up, but is now going back into the centre of midfield. He's not necessarily out of position because he's been asked to go and press up man for man.
It's also important to note at this point that when you watch this back, Daisuke Yokota almost anticipates the ball going backwards.
Yeah.
He anticipates the centre midfielder in the middle of your picture now. He anticipates that he's going to just pop that back into the centre half, and he thinks, if I can close down the centre half really quickly, Rangers are in the breakaway because you've got Lawrence Shankland on his own. But Yokota just gets sent for the messages, and then all of a sudden he's spun and he's away.
Yeah, and Manny Fernandez is out of position technically, but he's out of position because if we go to the next slide, Dan Neil's had to drop in and he's kind of caught between. So it looks, and then suddenly you know this frame looks really bad for Manny Fernandez, but that I think this is the drawback of if you're man for man marking when you're not. It's for me, Blair, it's the difference of, are you on the back foot or on you, or if you're are you on the front foot? As we see in this example, when one player is taken out of a man for man press like this, you're very vulnerable and susceptible. So for me, what I'd like to see in that type of situation is, you don't press fully man for man, you keep one man back, and that gives you the cover, and maybe you'll lose a little bit of your aggression. And listen, Rangers went in 1-0 up at half time. You understand that McInnes wants to get after the game. He was limited because he didn't have a left back. The wingers were his brightest players. But as Daniel spoke about in his press conference after the game, their kryptonite has been these counter-attack goals, and I think a lot of it comes down to even the second goal they concede over in Poland when Daniel misplaces that pass. Because it is very man-to-man orientated and it's big distances and it's wide on the ball, it's very hard to then look compact and structured. And I think the players then have to cover such big distances. I thought that with Lawrence Shankland on Thursday night, such big distances in order to win their duels and then try and progress the ball up the pitch when they're not looking after the ball well enough in that situation either.
As you mentioned to me on Thursday night, you're essentially one mistake away from being completely carved open.
Which is what happens with
because Yokota gets caught out, and then all of a sudden his man is on his own, and then you've got everybody else has got a decision to make. Do I go ball or do I stay with my man?
Yeah, exactly.
And Rangers just get ripped open.
So the positive, if we go down to the positive of the first half.
So this is it. We've spent a lot of time critiquing this, right? Derek McInnes must be doing it for a reason.
Yeah, of course he is. And so look at this 5 minutes into the game, Gassama, who was bright in the first half, turns his man. Again, part of the issue McInnes has had is Gassama's fitness. He's not been able to play a full 90 minutes, and Finlay Curtis was late back because of the World Cup, so there is mitigating circumstances. you can see there, look, Rangers kind of back four, if you will, with Dan Neil in the number 6 position. Man for man, even though they're on the ball.
You've got Daniel essentially dropping into auxiliary left centre half there with McCann playing left back.
Gassama turns his man, and look, you've got 2 free men in the middle, Shankland and Raskin. That's the benefit of the system. And this is why, so McKinnon said he changed it at the break because he wanted to get the wingers higher up the pitch. And I understand that. Rangers were looking dangerously. But again, see, if you look at the Jagiellonia shape here and how their back four is structured. Now, I know Rangers aren't playing a back four because they don't have a left back.
Yeah.
But that's where I think if Rangers were a little bit more hybrid, they might just have a little bit more cover instead of being man for man all over the pitch.
Do you know what that Jagiellonia shape there reminds me of when you used to describe Danny Rule last season? He would leave the man on the far side on his own because he's too far away to get the ball to. Yeah. And by the time you get the ball there, we can go over and cover.
Yeah.
So it's interesting mirroring of that because they've left Jokota there in absolute acres of space, but they're obviously quite comfortable going, all right, we're over here. We're pretty comfortable controlling the ball on this side of the park. By the time you get it over there to him, they don't believe that Rangers can move it quick enough to get to him that they think they can go and cover that.
Yeah, and everything's a trade-off because if we go down to the fact that Conceição did get free a lot, this is after 3 minutes, you can see that Jagiellonia have a man over in the box because in the first few minutes it wasn't clear who was meant to be picking up the Jagiellonia right winger. Another example here, after 13 minutes, you can see this is when they create quite a dangerous chance because he's free at the back post. Gassama's kind of on his heels in both situations. So you understand why McKinnon's changed that. But again, for me, it epitomises Gassama there has such big spaces to cover. McCann even going from left centre back out to left back. Maybe if you just, to use that example of Clement, you go a bit more hybrid, as Rangers did later in the first half. Protect and make it less about individual duels. You conserve a bit more energy. You look a bit more structured. But I think that's so central to McInnes's coaching that he's done that so often at so many of the teams that he's managed. I don't know to what extent he's really wedded to those man for man duels. But I think personally that's a big reason that Rangers have looked this vulnerable off the ball. Such big distances, individual duels, and when you make one mistake. Even think of the goal comes from a free kick last night. The goal that Dundee United were so close to scoring late on against Rangers at Tannadice, I think that comes from a Rangers set piece as well.
It's certainly a Rangers attack because it's 3v2 going forward the other way.
So it's happened a lot.
Okay,
and the Hibs goal. Sorry, the Hibs goal was absolutely. Was that a corner as well?
That was a Rangers free kick. Rangers corner. Yeah, well, just a breakaway again.
Yeah. So although that's a set piece, I still think that's emblematic of if you are a team who protects the centre, to use another example, a Gerrard team protects the centre first, recovers there instead of it being about man-for-man individual battles, then I think that's why you see a lot of the top teams in the Premier League, they will press man-for-man, but they'll also recover back into their shape, which gives you a bit more structure, a bit of time to rest. So it'll be interesting to see if that kind of remains off the ball, but I think it's caused Rangers these difficulties in the early games.
So that's Rangers defending and why they seem to be looking so vulnerable, especially on the counter-attack. Bit of an open-ended question here, Joshua, and I have faith that you'll be able to answer it in quite a succinct way. Why can't Rangers make any chances?
So again, I think I don't think anyone thought McInnes's football would be in August in particular would be the finished product.
No, I didn't expect it to be scintillating at this point.
I thought it'd be a lot of 1-0 wins, and he because he hasn't had the wingers and he's changed away from the 4-4-2 a lot. I don't think there's been relationships. I don't think there's been kind of clear structure.
No, there's no patterns.
And even I don't like getting into the kind of binary formation debates because formations can be, what's the difference between a manager having a 4-4-2 and then going to a 4-4-1-1? That could be dictated by an individual, right?
Yeah.
But it does feel quite binary in the way that shape has been changing so far this season. And the real reason that 4-4-2 went out of fashion, although it's kind of back in, but you've got to accommodate for it somehow, whether that's a midfielder tucking inside, a winger tucking inside, or a fullback tucking inside, is because of getting outnumbered in the middle of the pitch. one of the reasons I think Rangers have done so much business in the middle of the pitch is to try and give them legs there with someone like Cammy Devlin. But if you look at this example from the game against Hibs, this kind of summed up Cammy Devlin's game against Hibs for me, where look, big open spaces as Rangers stretch Hibs from a goal kicking away. They probably don't need to because they've got extra numbers. And Devlin, instead of driving into that space, clips a ball wide to Tour Romans. That was Rangers' whole game on the ball for me last weekend, where it's around it down to the sides. And ultimately, ideally in football, I think you attack through the middle as much as possible because that's where the goal is. So I think McInnes wants to get the ball wide. He's not been able to play in his ideal fashion because of the square pegs and round holes. But yeah, that Cameron Devlin selection, him staying on the whole game, it enables you to play with two strikers, but it's not helping you to get the ball to two strikers.
This is why you were cutting Dan Neil a bit of slack for that pass. Because
he's trying to play forward.
If he pings it out to McCrory, it's the easy ball, but it's a sideways ball. It's not the attacking ball.
Yeah.
You would rather see him make the mistake trying to play through the middle and tail Asgard in and play the safe pass out wide, which, to be fair to Cammy Devlin, that's what he's there to do. He's there to win the ball. He's there to maintain that sort of stability in the middle of the park. He's not there to play line-breaking passes. I don't think anybody expected that of him. So I get it. When you get that from him, you can't really be too upset because that's what he's there for. The issue is Rangers haven't signed someone that we can see so far. Dan Neil did a bit of it the other night. They haven't signed a real quality operator who can play those forward passes.
Yeah, but again, I think that's a wider thing about structure. So, and again, this is deeper than Derek McInnes. And this is why this is the source of many of my disagreements on and off air with Johnny is
yes.
And I'm not, that sounds like I'm slagging him. I'm not. It's just with different ideas. Everyone has different ideas about how football should be played. Managers, that's what makes them all different. But I think Rangers' core issue over the last 5 years has been they have not been a team who are at their most comfortable when they have 60% of the ball.
Yeah.
And they have 60% of the ball in 70, 80, 90 sometimes percent of matches. That's what they tried to correct last summer. We know about the kind of implementation issues, the culture issues down to the suit, and a fit didn't work. But the idea that Rangers need an identity because they need to control games with the ball is right.
Yeah.
Jagiellonia, for me, Blair, could grow into that game because they were more comfortable on the ball and Rangers had to chase around too much. And it's more energy sapping to be chasing the ball rather than being possession of it. So it's not, I don't think it's to say that you look at the Premier League, for example, it is really direct in moments. I don't think it's to say that you need to play 800-900 passes in order to win games at Rangers.
But you do need to have something more of a plan than give the ball to Yokota and try and cross.
Yeah, and I'd listen, I'm sure there's much more detail that we're not aware of and there's circumstances we're not aware of behind that. Yeah, you're right. I think wingers are the ones who are relied upon to inject pace into the game. But and a lot of it comes back to the off-ball stuff when you're in these kind of wide one-to-one duels and then not kind of coming back and being more compact on the ball. It's just kind of been so basketball-y, kind of back to front, hasn't it? So listen, if Rangers went into the season and they had options, really good options out wide, and they had really good options at fullback on either side, and this is where it's chicken and egg for McInnes, and I have sympathy with him because he's clearly not been happy enough with the recruitment so far.
No.
Then I don't think you see all these different shape changes, and he's trying stuff. And if he didn't try stuff and he just stuck to 4-4-2, and I'm going to play Dan Neil or Cammy Devlin right back, you get the accusation of you're way too dogmatic, sticking to your shape. There's just not been enough on either side so far to kind of cling on to, okay, we're either going to build around these individuals or we're going to build around this shape. And this issue that's long-standing, that is absolutely inherited, is that even when Rangers had a lot of the ball against Hibs, for how much of that game were Hibs truly uncomfortable, and a lot of those issues could be distilled for me back to the base of the pitch. Why is Cammy Devlin playing in there? I think because of what he enables you to do in terms of shape and what he can do off the ball. But then the trade-off for me is you lose that quality of a forward passer on the ball, which is the majority of the game state.
Yeah. The way that I'm coming down on this, having listened to you so eloquently explain, not being sarcastic, I genuinely do think that you do a good job of kind of breaking this down and telling everybody what they're kind of seeing at times. And between watching it myself and watching Hearts last season, I think this idea of individuals in this team that when Derek McInnes relies on the players to take so much responsibility themselves within this system, he needs those sort of special players to go and make the difference at times.
He's kind of said that, hasn't he?
The system isn't going to be enough. The way that Danny rules, okay, you just kind of throw numbers at it and overrun them, and you flood the box with players, and someone will put it in. That's not the case here. You need someone to go and make these things happen. You need, like we've seen at points last season, Kizaridis scoring those special goals against Celtic when he cut inside and took one on, took responsibility of it. Claudio Braga taking responsibility of these moments last year. And Rangers don't really have anybody that can do that. Asgard on occasion can do it. He did that against Dundee United. I don't think it's any coincidence that's the only open play goal a Rangers player has scored this season, when it's been a moment of individual, I'm taking responsibility for this. Obviously, look, all your goals can't come like that. That's not sustainable. But Rangers have a frightening lack of quality on the ball to be able to do these things. You're also hit by the news, obviously, this week that Kub Drujic is. I don't need to learn how to pronounce. Don't need to learn how to pronounce it anymore, because he's not coming to Rangers because they pulled out the deal due to fitness issues, we believe, and it's a case of Rangers need that quality now. So, in the last few weeks of this transfer window, it's absolutely paramount that they sign individual players that can do things with the ball. They have to. They have to.
We're also talking after they've made 9 signings. I mean, the Asgard one for me sums it up with the system. Trumiti and Nadiri, this is where I have a sympathy as well for McInnes. He didn't sign Nadiri, and Nadiri's struggling so far this season.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if Trumiti scores that goal, for example, against Hibs, doesn't do his ACL, you're talking about Yokota bringing that moment of individualism out wide.
Yeah.
Rangers perhaps getting back into the game, and just maybe then we're not asking these soul-searching questions because they've just got just enough to get through, just enough structure.
Yeah. And that's really all you need at this point in the season.
Yeah, you need to get through. Yeah. But then, so when those individuals aren't there, and Asgard sums it up for me, I had a lot of sympathy with him in that first half. Yes, you can say he was floating through the game and wasn't grabbing it enough, and there's a fairness to that. But I don't think he's getting the ball. If Rangers are playing wide, I don't think he's getting the ball in the areas that he to really go and impact and affect the game.
Yeah.
And do you know what it kind of reminds me of is when Danny Rule played the 4-4-2 against Motherwell after the split.
Mm-hmm.
He just conceded a very similar goal that day to the ones they've been conceding this season. But he goes with Miovski up top, and he goes with Jayden Magoma in place of Romans and Trumiti, and you saw the level come down. And Rangers had chances early on, they didn't take them. Then they were outnumbered in midfield. Motherwell popped it about. They didn't have the physicality, and that's what almost McInnes' team, I feel at its best when Danny Rule, beat Hearts 4-2.
Mm-hmm.
Although Rangers were direct and there was risks associated with their play, I thought they had the necessary individualism and physicality and ability to dominate duels that they've not had so far this season. Mm-hmm. And that Motherwell game kind of again sums up that fine line between, on that day, Danny Rule went with his favourite system but not his favourite players.
Mm-hmm.
And the result was what it was. Whereas for Derek McInnes so far, I think he's been chopping and changing between his favourite system and favourite players that he's still trying to get to know.
Yeah.
And neither have worked for him to this point.
I just think it's troubling that to have signed 10 players and still be looking so short of quality.
Yeah, I think Yokota, what stood out to me on Thursday night for him is he's just a clever player.
Yes.
He makes other people better around him. He draws a couple in. And
He's an easy player to like.
Yeah, and you can tell he is just you can tell he's got great football IQ and he knows how he knows how he's impacting a game. The sympathy I have is that Andrew Kavanagh said at the start of summer the best managers have the best teams. There's been this whole push towards signing intangibles, which again was spoken about at the shareholder meeting, but I do think that any football team, while you need to understand the club and all these metrics, I think quality will always win out. So yeah, absolutely. The difficulty now is you've got to go and replace Trumiti. You've got to get not just an able deputy to Romans, but someone who can probably challenge him given his injury record so far.
Mm-hmm.
And Rangers need a couple of wins to take a bit of the pressure off, because again, if Trumiti scores that goal against Hibs and he doesn't get the ACL, maybe we're having a slightly different conversation. If I was thinking in the first half last night, it's interesting to see how wingers. I'm saying last night because we're recording on Friday, so sorry. But it's interesting on Thursday night how wingers really, I thought, changed the dynamic on the ball in terms of getting Rangers forward, and that's how I think McInnes wants his team to inject pace into to play.
Yeah.
But when results happen, results dictate the mood, and Rangers are going into this game against St Mirren on Sunday looking for their first win of the season.
Yeah, it's not. Let me see. I hate throwing this superlative must win about, but
it has to happen.
It's must win. It has to happen at some point, because if not, we're going to be sitting here next week. We're going to be dissecting another bad result, and there's going to be people going, "Well, this can't carry on." That's literally what it's like at this club. You can't have a start like this and not be under extreme scrutiny.
Yeah, and I think that full-time reaction spoke to that, right? It was. And again, that's a lot.
Derek McInnes' full-time reaction spoke to that.
Yeah.
You might not have seen that if you were watching at home, but he was apoplectic at full-time. I've never seen a manager that emotional in a long time at full-time. And he obviously went up the tunnel. The players kind of stayed out to do that sort of walk, and the fans made their feelings clear that they were not having it, which I think is fair enough given what they've been served up this season. So yeah, that'll do us for this morning on the Saturday show. Thank you, Joshua, for giving us a little bit of insight into what's going wrong. Hopefully we can do one of these in the near future where you're discussing a win and things have went well for Rangers and things have been on the upturn.
I'd honestly love to.
Yeah, right, I know. No one would like to do that more than you. I do know that,
and I hope we've not blabbed too much. It is difficult to try and make sense of it sometimes. So, and listen, it's opinion. It's not. Derek McInnes obviously has forgotten more about football than in the last 3-4 weeks than we know. So it's not. It's opinion, and we're trying to identify what we see. Hopefully, it made some sort of sense.
No one wants this to work more than me. Honestly, I really want him to get it right, and I do think that somewhere down the line he will get it right. He will string wins together, but in the culture that we currently are in the world that we currently live in, everything is so instantaneous, and it can sometimes be hard to maintain that patience. So we shall see. We shall wait with bated breath. Certainly a win against St Mirren tomorrow would do a hell of a lot to calm that temperature and release that pressure valve a little bit that seems to be around Govan Way at the minute.
And obviously before we go, thanks to our sponsors for helping us do the show today.
Yes, of course, Lime Energy, fresh thinking energy, bringing you the Saturday morning tactics show. If you're going to the game tomorrow, try and enjoy it. Let's hope it's a first win for Derek McInnes in competitive action. But for now, on the Saturday show, that's been Joshua Barry. I've been your host, Blair Malloy. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening.